Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano-cap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano-cap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week we have Bill Wentworth, the CEO of DAIO, stock ticker DAIO. DAIO's second interview with the NanoCap podcast, but this is Bill's first. DAIO is a corporation that's a provider of manual and automated data programming and security provisioning systems for flash memory, microcontrollers, and logical devices. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate the time. Looking forward to speaking to the audience.
So, Bill, I went through your LinkedIn, as I do with most guests, and it looks like you've been, for the later half of your career, a mercenary, kind of dropping into these different tech companies that have device-enabled things and going in and setting them straight and such. And so, tell me a little bit about your background. You mentioned earlier you got started when you were 14. So tell me a little bit about your tech background, and where it's ebbed and flowed until you got to where you are today.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Will. Well, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was one of the early kind of facilitators of electronics distribution. So the distribution of semiconductors and hard drives and things like that. And so, worked at Dad's company the summer times, and then as programmable logic came out in the mid 70s, we started adopting and using DAIO's platform within my dad's company. And so I would work there summers. And then after I went to a 2-year tech school, actually opened up a much larger center as his company Linux became larger. Subsequently, that company was sold to a company called Anthem, which was then bought by Arrow. So I grew up in the world of electronics distribution, but specifically the programming side. Actually, the very first system I worked on DAIO was called the DAIO 1. It actually, you would type in truth tables, binary truth tables, and create a paper tape, and that was your master. And we put that in a cardboard box. It would say Raytheon, and would have the part number on it. I mean, it was the very first system they ever made. So my lineage goes way, way back to the very beginning roots of DAIO. So from there, in my family, you don't really get a lot of handouts. So I had to train one of my best friends to take my job. And Dad said, go figure life out. So I went out and started working at an independent programming company using DAIO equipment as well. And the company is owned by a couple gentlemen that worked at Curoff. Curoff was subsequently bought by Arrow, and they had to sell the business due to a conflict of interest. So I bought it for $30,000. Was doing maybe $100,000 in revenue. Flash forward to that, we grew as a strong independent service provider in the New England area. We then branched out to Silicon Valley, bought a small company out there, grew that out, and started to go to internationally and started opening up in Guadalajara, Mexico. Through that phase and that time, we grew the business to about $60 million. And then, we were then acquired by a private equity firm in 2001, in March, and then the dot-com bomb went off the very next month. So that's, I've been through a lot of cycles and a lot of change in this industry, multiple recessions, getting through the 01 and 08 crisis, but turned the business around, worked really hard, put money back in, took a year with no pay, didn't cut the salary of any of the, hourly wage folks and made the executive team take a pay cut just to get through that knothole. And then reestablished the brand. We were very focused on telco and networking like everybody else was. So, private equity firms, when they look at companies, they look for customer concentration. But one of the things that can be heavily damaging is domain concentration. So that was a lesson learned as well. Sold the whole company to Avnet in 2008 of June, then went there and under a contract and ran global services for them. The businesses combined at that time because we competed against the big multinational distributors, the Arrows, the Avnets, and Wileys, and all the ones that were around back then. And, the combined business, we were 1-2 in market share. We were number one in market share worldwide. Avnet was number 2. And so bringing the two companies together created a pretty big market share gain against DAIO, their chief competitor. But it was about a $600 million business combined with the silicon that was going through along with the service fees. In 4 years, we grew that to $1.2 billion. And so quite a lot of growth as a small company trying to work within the housing of an $18 billion company. There's a large corporate tax you get called back office, and you're like, what is this? So it was a lot of learnings. And when I got there, I said we should have had more of their business than we did. But it was a good time. It was a great deal for the company and the employees, because right after we sold, just like with HIG, the financial crisis hit. And I'm not sure we would have got through that knothole given the amount of debt we accumulated going through those tough times. So it was a good call. And it was a good acquisition just because it was a really good culture match. Avnet is known for, people and treating their people really well. We had a very similar culture, so it was a good match. So then from there, I decided to go into
Do you mind, Bill?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I take a step back real quick. So with both of your companies, first off, private equity doesn't have the greatest reputation. Was there any sort of backsies with them when the dot-com bubble happened, where they said, actually, we have all these different stipulations, and you had to sit there and fight back and forth? Because I could see them fighting tooth and nail.
No, yes, they do. And honestly, they were scrambling themselves across their whole portfolio because they had a bunch of tech companies in their LBO fund. And so they really weren't looking over my shoulder in my part. I was asking them to reinvest because supply chains were shifting. Of course, private equity in their infinite wisdom like to call on these large consulting companies such as McKinsey and Bain and stuff to make sure that, can this company last? Can it get through this knothole? And, we pay them $500 million, just $500,000 just to take what I know, put it on a piece of paper, regurgitate, saying, yes, you should go to Asia.
Make today's PowerPoint.
You should go to Asia. Yes, right, exactly. So, that was what I already told them. We didn't need to spend $500,000.
And then my second question is kind of about the chicken and egg of you selling right before the financial crisis. Is it partially just due to right before a financial crisis means that everything's as hot as ever? And so if everything's just hot and someone offers you a price and you go, wow, I didn't even think it was valued that much. Was that part of the reason just as much as anything?
No, the valuation, again, first time selling a company, I learned a lot through the process. Should have got a higher valuation, honestly, but it wasn't bad considering what happened right after. So looking back, still a good deal because we needed that access to capital to grow because supply chains were shifting and we couldn't go with asset lending banks. It just wasn't an option because we're a CapEx heavy business. So when that happened post and I got them to agree to move and get into these other geos like Brazil, we had a location in Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai. So we were a global company at that point. We have to shift with our customers because they were moving their supply chains. And as a service provider, it's a regional service. Hard to do US to China or Singapore time-wise and the logistics and then the risk that's in the supply chain by not being local. So that was obviously a huge reason why we're able to grow again. We landed Apple as an account back in 97. We were one of 3 sole source suppliers on the iMac when Steve Jobs came back. We're actually on a call with him with the other 2 suppliers, and he said, the 3 of you cannot fail or Apple's done. So that was enough motivation, and we became a very highly valued supplier at Apple, and we managed most of their IP across all their products. So that's really what helped us get out of, telco and networking, which is where the industry crashed. We got into consumer electronics, we got into automotive early. So, we really, myself and the team really focused on diversification of domains. We had to, in order to build a company that could last. So that all worked out well, and that's the reason why Avnet procured us. So then worked there for 4 years in the semiconductor side, then went over to their technology solutions group. And they had bought 12 companies over in that group. Some of them were not integrated. 7 of them were losing money. They're like, you did a great job integrating Source. Can you help us over here? That was probably one of my biggest career mistakes ever. That was the worst job I ever had. It was in such bad shape, but I was able to get it to break even within 7 months and get 253 services being sold down to 4 main service pillars and went to market with that. And that business was then acquired by Tech Data, which is now Tech Data Synex. And that service group I created with a good team great team actually, is now $1 billion plus business within TD SYNNEX. So services is something I know really well.
Is that something that, not to give them credit back after just
Yeah.
talking bad about them, but
Yeah.
did you learn anything from like the McKinsey folks when you have to take 100 and some services and get it down to 4, where it seems like you were kind of the internal consultant at that point?
Yeah, McKinsey actually did come in later overall for Avnet because Avnet had 3 divisions, but they had back office for all 3. And the other thing they were trying to weight is computer products and software related middleware something Avnet should be in. And I think they came to a conclusion that it wasn't, and they decided to sell it. So I was on Phil Gallagher's staff. He's now the CEO. He came back to Avnet. He's now the CEO. We're still pretty close, Rex. So these are relationships I can leverage with DAIO as well, right? Because I grew up in distribution. People that work for my dad are still at Arrow. I know the Avnet executive team. So I have an extra advantage to be able to talk to these large companies in the supply chain that do buy this equipment.
Now, here's the mega question, Bill.
Okay.
You've been through booms and busts. You've seen the big telecom build out, broadband build out and such. You're now in a place where you hear about this data IO opportunity at the same time as there's this ginormous AI build out going on.
Oh, yeah.
What lessons did you learn? What you hear about different businesses that are looking for leadership all the time, I assume. What got you excited about data IO specifically, this time and place with what's going on? You've learned all the lessons already. Tell me just kind of about your thought first coming in.
Yeah. Well, what happened was a gentleman by the name of Ed Smith was on the board of DAIO. And I had known DAIO. Anthony would call me as an industry expert as he was managing the company as to when challenges or technology changes are happening, he wanted my thoughts on it because I've been in the industry far longer than himself. And honestly, the interesting thing at DAIO, like 40% of our employees have been there 20 years or longer. They've been there for a while. It's a great thing, but also it can be a negative because that's all they know, right? My company bought more of this type of equipment than any company in the world over a 25-year period. 2 of the competitors to DAIO I put in business personally. So I know the ecosystem. So the interesting thing about what's going on right now, and there's a lot, look, the AI build out has been just nothing that's ever happened in the tech economy, ever. Not even close. The amount of money spent, how fast it's being spent. And honestly, we'll start to see the impacts of that technology this year. You saw dribbles of it last year. This is the big breakout year, especially on the code side of things, building applications and coding, but also in research for sure. I mean, if you look at jobs coming out of college, it's tough to come out as a research, general business person into some of these consulting companies because Accenture has built 25,000 agents already. That's a lot. Yeah. So, there's certain jobs that will be impacted and slow, but AI can be your friend. And so I actually am going through an exercise. I have a friend of mine that I've known for years that's worked in the technology space, super smart when it comes to DevOps and app dev and, coding and things like that. Worked at Andreessen Horowitz and then worked at Opsware and HP. And so I brought him because I got half my software team is anti-AI, I would say. And I'm like, look, guys, I'm trying to help your career.
What? Okay, I've heard that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Is it
much option you would think that there should be out there right now?
Yeah, that's the thing. I have many friends who work in programming code, and I'm much more active in all the different AI, Claude bot stuff going on compared to the average. So tell me a little bit more about the AI integration. Do you see it more as let's use AI to get operations as tight as possible and then move AI into product development and doing code? Are you trying to do it all at once? How are you even implementing something that changes on a weekly basis? I'm on X and reading about AI and different things coming out an hour and a half a day and I feel behind. So how do you kind of manage? Yeah, how do you manage it and where you go, okay, this is a repeatable process. This for sure is something that we can have an agent or AI do. This is something where we'll put this on the back burner for now.
Yes, absolutely. And, I watch and learn about AI every morning, every night, because it does move that fast. And there are certain casts that I watch that I think are credible and do understand, and they bring on some of the industry experts so you can understand the impact. But it is a daily change. I came from the semiconductor industry, and that changes every 18 months, right? And everybody thought that was crazy fast. IT was a 5-year refresh cycle. They were slower than a turtle. But I mean, I've been used to change, but this rate of change is something that the industry's never seen. And so to keep up with it. So we are using it in research and marketing and sales, internally, externally. The products that we're going to start developing and existing products that we're redeveloping within our own ecosystem is going to help drive new sources of revenue. The automation can create really cool automation linkage with your clients and your suppliers. That's the exciting part. The other part is being able to process a new product launch in 3 months versus 12 months. And because software is always the lagger, right? Hardware is fairly easy, does take time, but yeah, I see it accelerating our product launches and stuff. So the interesting thing about AI, because it's all you hear about, and yes, the rest of the semiconductor industry has not been participating in all this growth. Now, Micron has certain memory, the memory guys are participating, but it's a small
just recently
group.
though.
Yeah, right. It is just recently. You're right. And it's interesting because, NVIDIA builds a whole product set around their GPU. So it's not just the GPU, it's the networking chip, it's the memory. Yeah, it's all the other things. So a lot of these companies are not participating in that. Now, does that mean they get eliminated? No, because I think the next big growth spurt, which will be big, is the automation and the edge of the network. Because if you think about autonomous anything, the network at the edge is going to have to grow, and it has to be local. You can't have data centers driving around the back of your trunk, right? That's just not reality. And you can't wait for a signal to come back from, Washington State from the data center, because by the time that signal gets back, that accident has already happened. So I think the edge of the network, as it gets smarter, will drive overall chip demand. So I can see that starting to take really and huge growth, massive growth. I think in years end of 27, 28, 29, 30, I think you're going to see the entire industry participate in what AI has essentially, enabled, right?
And you mentioned your employees having this institutional knowledge of decades, and with you combine it all together, centuries, right?
Yeah.
Without giving up the special sauce, how do you kind of download their brains into AI so that it can help you give information back to you?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been easy because a lot of them think of it as a job threat, and it's not. If you're like what we told the team today, I'll go back to the software team, is think of you as the product lead. You're the product developer. You're not the hands on the keyboard anymore. You're a leader. You're just leading automation. That's the only difference. And then when that light bulb went off today in the conference room with them, now I've got my friend, I'm back in Boston right now, so I travel back and forth to Seattle. The light bulb went off, and they all said, "You're right. We can be developers, like true product design developers." And so they all, I think, within 24 hours realized that this is something that can help them not only develop products better, faster, but advance their careers as well. Because I told them, look, if you go out in the market and try to get another job and you haven't, the first question you're going to be asked, how do you utilize AI in your projects? And if you can't answer that and show a use case, you're not going to get hired. You're just not. So it's unfortunate, but it's a really huge tech advantage because it's going to be a while before AI can connect all the dots. And even then, you're still going to need the storyteller. You still need that, right? Yeah. So anyway, so I think it's an exciting time, and it's an exciting time for DAIO because, look, we spent a year of recovering the business. It had been in pretty tough shape. It also had domain concentration in automotive. So diversifying the domains, coming out with new products that the customers want to consume, but also taking our platform and moving it to other parts of the data provisioning space, which the company has never done. So think about today, we just do offline data provisioning with our CapEx, but data gets provisioned as a service provider like my old company. Why aren't we providing services? We make the equipment. It's crazy not to. And then the other place is at the end of tests. So when a board gets completed, it goes to the tester. There's a place to load data there. There's a way to put our platform on those testers. We're in conversations with large test companies I'll leave unnamed, and to put our platform in their testers to capture that. That takes our market from 120 million to over $1 billion that we can serve. So DAIO should be a $100 to $200 million company, and that's where we'll go. We've got a ton of M&A lined up, over 85 million at this point. So we're excited about this year. This year is the time that DAIO is going to grow, and both organically and inorganically. So, we'll still invest a couple $1 million this year, but last year it was almost $3 million of fixed, $2.5 million of investment. That's behind us. We've got the right team. The business has been fairly optimized. There's still some cost synergies we can bring out of the business and through automation, but we're in the right place now at this point to grow again.
Yeah, I usually ask leaders as we're kind of wrapping up what gets them out of bed in the morning, what gets them excited, but that seems pretty straightforward as you explain it. So then I guess I would like to rephrase it in say 5 years from now, what does the perfect world look like to DAIO? Where are you integrated into? What kind of businesses are you maybe trying out? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, the 3 to 5 year plan is in those 3 pillars, essentially CapEx, services, and programming at test. In 3 to 5 years from now, we're getting far more revenue from those later business units, the test and the services, far more than those businesses could be $40 to $75 million divisions of DAIO. But the great thing about it is it's still using our platform. We leverage the technology we've already built. And that's the big thing. We're making a lot of changes to the tech. At the end of this year, we will release our next technology platform that will last at least a decade. And so we're super proud that we're putting a ton of power into this thing. It could be placed in it could be embedded. It could be enabled within other people's products. And so it gives DAIO a lot of opportunity to really grow into those 2 markets.
Yeah, for a company that's been around for almost 50 years, very, very exciting time to be at DAIO. If people want to learn more about DAIO, what you're up to, your new initiatives and such, where should I send my audience?
Well, we are going to redo our website. It's aged, so that's one of the other things. We're going to use AI to build it. Obviously the website's a great landing page. You'll see a lot of activity. We're redoing and revamping our investor relations page. It's kind of antiquated, doesn't have a lot of news on it. There'll be a series of announcements that come out on the public markets. Obviously, being public, you've got to announce everything. Certainly has to be crisp and it can't be too vague, but it certainly has to have the right message. So I think there'll just be a lot of news on the typical wires, and then we do our own press releases as well. So dialing into DAIO at any point in time on the new webpage, which should be up by end of March. There'll be a lot of information there.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for spending the time with me today. And for those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement therefor a NanoCap podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap podcast express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this podcast.